Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Hudson House. And what a lovely day it is. Sun is out. I've been at the beach, had a little walk through the Chine. It was lovely. Today I've got Joe Bucknall with me. He's a good friend of mine. He is back from university. Is that right?
Yeah, back from university for the whole of summer.
In Hull.
In Hull, yeah,
City
in Yorkshire.
of Culture.
It is indeed.
I remember when you first went, you said that was going to be it's the new cultural hub of the UK.
Yeah, now it is the cultural hub of the UK as far as I'm concerned, but I don't feel like it was ever going to have the gravitas of, say, like when Liverpool was City of Culture.
Right.
Because that is, I mean, it was already a pretty iconic cultural city. It had like the Beatles, the kind of music that, I mean, comes out of that place, you know. You know, we've got Philip Larkin, I guess. That's pretty cool. You know, some poet. Pretty good one.
Right.
Pretty well, like, renowned within poetry circles, but he was never going to, like...
Is there anything that I know of his? I'll just Google him.
They fuck you up, your mum and dad?
Do they?
That's a good one. That's a good one, actually.
Well, is he a recent poet?
No. Although they've got, funnily enough, they've got an exhibition on him, like, right now going on. So if you really wanted to check it out, you've got about 3 days to get to Hull.
Wait, really?
So yeah, that might be worth doing. No, look up the one, They Fuck You Up, Your Mum and Dad. Something about taking a bit of both their craziness and adding some for you. Obviously, I'm not quoting it exactly.
So he didn't actually say they fucked me up?
They do.
They
fuck you up, your mum and dad is the first line of the poem. And
really?
I think the name of it.
But that seems quite recent.
I think he was quite ahead of his time. Oh, this be the verse, maybe that's the name.
They fuck you up, your mum and dad. When was this written? It's kind of been like 1800s or anything, can't it?
I don't know.
They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by fools in old-style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have kids yourself. Have any kids yourself.
Wow. So how does that make you feel, having just had a child relatively
I
recently?
mean, I've fucked up. You know, the thing is that I think the more you get older, you realise that when you do any self-observation, that there are parts of you that you can see have got like a pathway that you can lead back to childhood. And I think any self-reflection is good and understanding that. But also, our parents had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, like even more so than us, because science has moved forward.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about this earlier, that there's this school of thought, especially from the older generations, that are like, when your child cries, just leave them in the room, let them cry it out, they'll cry themselves to sleep, and after a few days or weeks or whatever, they'll get used to it, and then you can have your evenings and drink wine.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all well and good, but we now understand that the way the brain acts when it's under that sort of stress, you know, like the baby doesn't understand. It doesn't sort of go, well, maybe they just need a break from me, you know, and actually, come to think of it, I probably could just go to sleep. You know, that's not the thought process. Like they cry themselves to exhaustion until they're out of fluids, and then they just sort of collapse and pass out. You know, they go into survival mode, where the way they break down nutrients and the way they store fats, and the way their neural pathways are created change under this sort of stress, and that can have giant problems for future. It can be propensity towards violence, propensity towards addiction, attention, all sorts of things. And that was the standard of parenting.
Yeah.
You know?
And that is still a pretty common school of thought as well, I think.
Yes.
My son, I'm pretty sure my parents did that on me, and I'm pretty much all of those things. I'm massively aggressive, as you know.
Yeah, your violence knows no bounds.
Yeah, it's through the roof. But certainly things like, I mean, I'm definitely an attention seeker. If anyone I know actually listens to this, they'll be able to confirm that. And yeah, I certainly think that, yeah, maybe just because the schools of thought have moved on, but yeah, does that necessarily mean, because it's not like people couldn't bring up decent and honourable people sort of prior to like 40 years ago, when like child psychology sort of took a bit of a leap forward. So I don't know, do you feel that technology, with what it's given you, is the advantages of like now you actually know more the psychology and how to raise a child in more sort of like an ideal way, do you think that counters all the negative sides that technology's brought to growing up a child?
It's interesting because I think it's just different, you know. I'm not saying that the way that we were brought up was bad, because there are lots of things that I'm never going to be able to do with my son because of technology. You know, like things have changed. You know, the way that you can see 2 or 3 year olds now sat on YouTube and they can work YouTube better than I can work YouTube. You know, so they've gone so far, and that's expected of people. You have to go a long way to be a part of a Western environment where the kids aren't on their phones all the time, and so they've lost that. But they've now also got everything at their fingertips, and the studies are sort of quite that sort of poles apart, where on one hand spending loads of time on a computer or whatever is very bad for you. It's also very good for your brain. They say that your hand-eye coordination is really good if you play computer games. You're also reflexes, problem solving, quick thinking, all of these things are improved from playing a video game compared to being outside with a stick whacking a tree, you know. But being outside with a stick whacking a tree has got its own benefits, and so it's just so difficult. And also I think evolution requires tension, and people need that the strain and the struggle just as much as kids do to improve. Like my boy is now walking and running around, right? So we have to get these gates that go between doorways, stop him running into rooms that we don't want him to be in.
Yeah, of course.
And they've got a little clip at the top, and they've got little hooks at the bottom, so the hook comes down, and it means you can swing the door whichever way you want to, you know, or you can just restrict it to going out or in or pull or push or whatever. He now, at 13 months, walks over to it, looks down, understands which clip is down and pulls or pushes in response, and just opens it, holds the clip and opens it. And then he'll walk over, see them both down and go, ah!
He's already worked it out, he's clocked it.
Yeah.
He's clocked the mechanism.
And I don't know how much of a genius that means he is. I mean, I imagine quite a large one.
Probably a complete genius, yeah.
But it's fascinating to me that problem solving's there. And also, humans need that problem. They need problems, need strife, need struggle. And as much as I don't want my son to grow up and not understand what struggle is, or in the other turn, to have a bad life, I want him to have those struggles. So you don't want to be a dick to him, but you also want to push him.
You want to make certain things difficult, because that is how you get better at things, by doing things that are hard. Yeah,
I mean, like, my life has never been particularly awful, but there's been some parts that have been very difficult, you know, and I think I've grown from that, you know, and the person that I am today is directly influenced by the fact I've had some hard times. I've had some dodgy moments, you know, some really cringeworthy events. But that doesn't mean that they're not valuable. But I wouldn't wish it upon my son. You know, I wouldn't wish it upon my son to be like a borderline alcoholic for years, and then, you know, although it's relatively a sad existence, you look back and it makes you stronger from it. You know, but
you can take something from it.
It's probably a bad example.
No, that's definitely true. I mean, I've had a pretty cushy life, to be honest, but even the things that I would look at the time, that I'm like, I wish this situation wasn't happening right now, it has always either led to something good, or if not, I've at least taken something from it positive that you can sort of think, well, maybe in hindsight it was a good thing that situation happened, just for the things that you've taken away from it.
Yeah, I think if anything is like universal, it's that universe will test you. And no one has an easy life. You know, like I often look at someone who's rich and I go, I wouldn't be happier if I was rich, but I'd have more tools to enable that happiness.
Yeah,
you know, and
that's definitely true.
That's the way I try to think. But also part of me goes, is money doesn't make you happy just something rich people tell poor people so that makes it okay? You know, I'm like, is it a conditioning where they're all sat like? And the thing is, I know that being rich brings a whole different sort of set of problems, but I imagine it's like not being able to trust anyone is better than not being able to feed your children.
Yeah, well, that's very true, but also you've got to think things like, maybe that's something that rich people tell us, but I think it depends on the background you come from. If you're from a background where all of the people around you are wealthy, then I think you have a lot of the ease without really as many of the difficulties. Like, say, for example, you're a poor person who wins the lottery, or you suddenly sort of, I don't know, you're like a small-time actor and you suddenly get a big job and become successful. Then you could still be surrounded by the people that you love, who are on like a completely different background to you, which means that you either have to like find new people that you can hang out with. There was a black comedian who was talking about his life like in the ghetto in America, and he was saying how he was a big enough celeb now that he could either have fun with the people that he grew up with and likes to hang out with, or he could now hang out with like wealthy white people. Now he sometimes hangs out with wealthy white people for the easy life of it, and eventually the reason he got shot is because he then ended up carrying a gun so that he could hang out in the background that he used to. He could still like hang out in, say, like Compton or wherever it was. So that he could, say, like hang out amongst his equals, but he had to carry that weapon with him just to then be a wealthy person who can hang out.
Well, just in case he can get robbed or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or someone recognises him and think like, what the hell are you doing around here? I know how wealthy you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it brings more difficulties if you become wealthy from a point that isn't.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I suppose because if you are just born, like you wake up like you're a Rockefeller, you know what I mean? Like you are a Saudi prince.
Yeah.
Then I suppose you just.
Do you think you even have a concept of what being poor is?
Yeah, no. There's have you ever heard of the Sultan of Brunei?
No.
This guy was a super rich sultan in Brunei, I imagine.
Yeah.
I haven't actually read the book myself. I just heard people talking about it, and I read this little sort of like clickbait article. He was a super rich baller, right? And he used to go about his day to day, and he'd just employ women for like a month or 2 or 3 months at a time. Some were prostitutes, some of them weren't. Some were actresses or whatever. Okay. And he just thought they were attractive, so he'd have them in his palace, and he'd have this. He'd employ them to be in the nightclub at these times.
Oh, I see. This is like a recent, or is it more like a nightclub of its era?
Oh no! This is like he's still alive now.
Oh right, okay, okay.
And so he'd just have all these women in this nightclub, and then he'd just turn up sometimes in like electric sliding socks and pants with a shirt on, like just completely owning the fact that I'm just a multi-billionaire who's hired you all, and he just used to slide in, get his drink, they go, you and you, follow me,
wow.
and just wander out. And this prostitute wrote a book about him, threatened to write a book about him or something, and then I'm not sure what happened to her, but I think the book's out. Let me just double check.
I think that's got to get boring after a while. Even things like that, part of the like being with people or like being with women or whatever in that way is part like sort of the thrill of the chase, and you have to sort of get to know each other, and there's only so much that just having essentially like sex slaves around you can satisfy you to an extent. I don't know, maybe you didn't get bored of it.
Yeah, no, I think when you're that rich, your spectrum of like shit you can get up to. Like I enjoy to have a laugh, and I'm relatively spontaneous, but I'm also relatively poor, and so my spontaneity is like quite a small spectrum of things that I'm going to get up to, you know. Like whereas if you're a billionaire and you're spontaneous or you're fun loving, the sort of shit you can do on a day to day is poles apart from mine, and that's. So I imagine if I was that rich, I'd be fucking up a lot. Especially with the age of the smartphone. Not even weird, well, not massively weird, but
some weird
just stupid stuff. I imagine I'd just do stupid things a lot.
Yeah,
because you'd be able to.
I think I would. I don't think I would, like you say about that spectrum, because of like say the upbringing that I've had. I probably don't have some of that spectrum. So I think if there was, I don't know, let's say like a lottery win or something where one of us became mega wealthy, I don't even think I'd think to do of things like that, because they wouldn't even be in my spectrum to start with. Not that I'm such a good guy that I wouldn't love to have like a harem of women around me at all times, but it wouldn't even be in my
I wouldn't do with them all, to be honest.
Well, maybe they're just there as like I mean, you see people like walking in with a model on each arm.
Yeah. Well, because I imagine that, there's all this animal sexual aspect to it. You're like, oh, yeah, loads of women would be great. Like, but I think in practice, you get tired unless you're really drunk, get loads of drugs. Which that'd probably be one night of the weekend. You know, like, so night one, drink, drugs, harming women, having a good time. You know, day two might be let's pop on the beach, play some board games. You know, in the evening. You know, like make some dinner, have a nice little barbecue, get to know these girls. You know, and then by that point, they're on a different level, so the animal aspect's no longer there. A lot of them don't find you attractive, and you sense that. Yeah. And then you'd be like, well, I'm not gonna force it upon you, because there's now you've been humanised. You know, we're now friends, and then by that point, you probably just get along.
I think, I don't know how gross I could be. and not think of myself as gross. Like,
Yeah.
if I was, say, like, the sort of like cliche of some like big fat sweaty like mob boss who's got loads of like young good looking women around him because of his money, I think in that case I'd still be sort of thinking, well, they are literally just here for the money. There is no actual attachment, and probably when I go near them with my big fat sweaty hands, they're probably going, oh, gross, he's about to touch me, but I've got to put up with it. I think that voice would be in the back of my mind, and I don't really think I'd be able to go over that.
I think people who do have that sort of scenario, like, there's an element of like this predatory sociopath in them that's like, that's what I like about this situation, you know, because they must know. They don't look at themselves and go, God, you're good looking, you know, like you're fat, sweaty, covered in tattoos and scars, or just if you are some sort of mob boss or something, or whatever. Or if you're some fat, sweaty sheikh, or some fat, sweaty Rush, or some fat, sweaty Brit, like posh knobhead, you know, or whatever it is. Everyone will be fat and sweaty necessarily. Just... You must know that the reason that they're here is for an arrangement. When you're a multi-millionaire who's got a really gorgeous 20-year-old wife, but you happen to be 65. Like, you must know.
I don't know. Maybe you can become that delusioned.
I
don't know. Maybe money does something to you.
Or maybe you kid yourself, but I can't imagine the wedding day you're looking at each other going, wow, we've found each other. You know, like it may have took me 65 years to find the one who happened to be 20, who happened to be 0 when I was 45, you know. But
it's
you're
like
the one.
I've seen one of those, I don't know if it was necessarily a meme, but some sort of joke I saw online where it's like, it was a newspaper headline about a guy who won some sort of massive jackpot, and then he met his wife the following day, and it's just basically this. It was a big fat sweaty guy. I don't want to keep riffing on the big fat sweaty men, but he was one. And someone had put, like, what a mad coincidence, like, this guy's the luckiest man in the world. First he wins the lottery, and then he meets a partner that he's going to fall in love with. The coincidence is unreal.
And was she pretty well put together?
She was unbelievable. She was sort of 21, some sort of buxom young model.
Right. Happened to work in the restaurant and was celebrating it.
As the ticket numbers came through. Amazing coincidence,
I just think it's fascinating, though, that there is this genetic lottery where there's all sorts of goods and bad scenarios. You get, like, you can either have grown up in a like, I imagine the most likely thing to become would be in Chinese agriculture. Do you know, like being born into like a farm in China. You know, like that's statistically, if you had to say what the most likely thing that you're going to be born into is, would that be right, or would you be like an Indian? I mean, they're the largest populations, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. I guess I don't know what the most. Just say, like, in this country alone. Like, say, for example, half the people live in the country, half the people live in the cities. So, I don't know, maybe you're more likely to be one of the people that's, like, densely populated Tokyo or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. The genetic lottery. I was thinking a lot about the sort of genetic lottery and how much it is like a genetic lottery, because I was visiting some friends at better universities than I go to. So, say, like, Bath, Exeter, Bristol... you know, sort of the big boy ones.
So when you say better, does that mean like
highly esteemed, more
that's
esteemed
because of?
I don't know, maybe the sort of the grandiose things that they're what's the word? Someone who's studied somewhere. I can't remember. Basically, that's the sort
they
of
get better
things.
grades.
Yeah, I think
average,
probably partially that.
Yeah.
Higher entry level requirements, which means it's like more difficult to get into in the first place, which means it could be more. I don't know, selective. But I realised when going around these places that it's all beautiful people that go there.
Right.
And I was thinking that is an odd coincidence that they were actually just the best, most esteemed universities that I go to have best looking people. And I think I eventually worked out why. And I think it's that sort of generations and generations of quite wealthy men have been breeding with generations and generations of beautiful women to the point that they then have these people from very wealthy backgrounds that can go into private education that have also got amazing looks because of the sort of circles they move in, and also on top of that, just like nutrition, knowledge about healthcare. So there's like this sort of money can like breed this like race of beautiful people.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can't have all been good looking.
No, they weren't. Don't get me wrong. There was all sorts about, but it just seemed like sort of the average.
Yeah,
the average was a lot higher.
Yeah, and I imagine because it's proven that the better, the more money you have as a household, and the better education you get, then the more smarter you are able to become. You know, and the type of education you get in your average primary school to a private primary school is poles apart. You know? And so that again, we just because I think there's this, the conversation about intellect and education is so interesting, because I think a lot of intelligence is very hard to quantify. Intuition, for example, the ability to talk to people, the ability to understand things quickly. That's nothing to do with what you can be taught necessarily. You can, I imagine, you can improve it in ways, but you meet a lot of people that are very, very articulate, very knowledgeable, can spew a lot of ideas and thoughts at you, but not very open thinkers. They're very narrow in the way that they take on things, and also their emotional intelligence, being able to not be a dick, you know, like things like that,
and just get through everyday life. There's so many aspects to it. I find that's fascinating, because you can be very intelligent, like super smart, but you can't get a girlfriend. You can't lose virginity. You can't socialise properly. Like it's like sacrifices you make. Like in order to be this sort of person, you've got to sacrifice this a little bit. In order to be quite a vain person, you can't look too deeply into things, because the second you do, then you'll you've got to stay skin deep.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so there's always these little sacrifices, and that then comes back to the whole genetic lottery thing, because it's like it's predetermined. Because when you're 8, you don't know that you're attractive, you know?
No.
And then you're at school, and this pecking order starts to form. Like, you see it already, and it's not necessarily based upon looks. And I couldn't really tell you what it is based upon, but I remember in primary school there was already the cool kids. There was already the
just an air of confidence, maybe.
Yeah,
the early stages.
I think athletics as well.
Yeah, sport. If you're in the football team.
Yeah, but then it gets to this point where it becomes sort of quite aesthetically based, where if you're good at sports, or if you're good at whatever, that does a decent amount. But then someone just selects you as good looking, and then a consensus builds that person's like favourable, and there's no definite, like, you couldn't say what a good looking person is. It's like an audience. It's like you're on like what's that stupid date show, whatever it is, what everyone's talking about,
First Dates,
or something like
Come
that.
Date With Me.
Yeah, exactly. Where they're just like, people like, there's a consensus that go, we all agree that you're good looking, you know, and then so you're allowed to think of yourself as good looking.
Oh yeah, I think I know the one. Take Me Out.
Yeah, just like that, you get voted in, and but for whatever reason, some people you find very attractive, but no one else thinks they're attractive, and so you've cast your vote, and it wasn't taken upon. We've gone the other way, you know. It's like the fucking Voice or something. Whereas if enough people go, yeah, that person's good looking, then you're good looking.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. I think there could be some kind of like objectivity to it. I think there are some people that I don't even just necessarily think, because of our like societal standards, that would be considered beautiful. I don't necessarily know what that would be, but I really think if there was some, say, sort of brought up a child removed enough from, say, sort of the media and society and things like that, I wonder whether they would still come to the same like conclusions of like, even just down to like primal level, who they would want to like mate with, even just on that level. Of why we've like sort of built the certain remits of like what beautiful is. There must have been a consensus at some point for us to even like build upon the notions that we already have. Yeah,
well, the science suggests that it's genetic now. That you can smell it. You can smell genetic matches. They did a study where they had, I think it was 10 women wear wear a different, like their own white t-shirt to bed for the night, and they get up and put it in a jar. And then they took their genetic makeup or whatever, and then they got loads of men to smell the jars and rate it in their top 10.
Oh my god!
And there was like a decent, like a massive hit rate of the people with the best genetic matches The men would smell the woman out that was best genetic matches.
Oh, my word.
But the only thing that changes that, which is fascinating and also a bit odd, is women can smell their matches, you know,
Okay.
and that's been proven unless they're on the pill.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, because it sort of messes with your hormones
Yes.
and your pheromones and stuff like that.
Isn't that fascinating?
That is pretty. Yeah, that's interesting. So when they're on the pill and they're sort of their
They're
hormones
just-
are being messed around, they're not giving off the same like signals, the markers.
And also, they're not choosing their genetic matches. They're not
Wow.
choosing
What, and their receptors don't work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow, flip. Why would you? I mean, I can't even
And
think of a way to think to do that in the first place. But that's some interesting science.
Interesting. But like good looks transcends even being a nice human being, because sometimes there's just this girl and she's awful, you know, like you talk to her and she's just not a very nice human being for whatever
Despicable,
reason,
yeah.
but she's so sexy, you know, you look at her,
Yeah.
like, oh god, you're good looking, but you're such a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, I do you so good, but then I'd never talk to you again,
Yeah, and
because
then
you're
like to
horrid,
leave
you know,
immediately.
yeah, and that's fascinating, because
Yeah.
you look at me like, oh god.
I don't know. I think it can. I think it can get to the point where it's even can overwhelm the looks.
Yeah,
I've met people
yes,
that are
yeah.
so beautiful that they're that despicable that it's like you don't even find them attractive anymore because you know what lurks beneath.
Well, yeah, I mean, now that I've been in a long-term relationship for a while, and as I've got older, like I've found that when I was young and I was hormonal, like all you had to do was look the right way, and I had an immediate boner. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there wasn't even a standard necessarily. It was just that. But now, like, I find that what I find attractive isn't really that aesthetic anymore. You know, it's
Right,
it's
okay.
all based. I like talk. Like I find like a lot of the people that I work with that are attractive girls. If they're not very intelligent, I can't have a conversation with them, or I can't. Then I just like not really
Yeah, what's
interested.
the
You know,
point?
like
Yeah.
I've sort of got a lot of that out of my system. That it's just that
Just based on
aesthetic.
aesthetic,
Yeah,
yeah.
that aesthetic attraction. I think, and that's.
Do you think that's part of getting older?
Yeah, I imagine so. I'm sure some people don't. Some people just, and it's a status thing as well. Like there are some guys that I know that are single that are my age that are still chasing these younger girls that you've got nothing in common. Like there's no point. Like you're not doing it for a long term relationship. You're doing it because you can go shag a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm like great. Like to me, a 19-year-old looks like a child. You know, like.
Yeah.
And it's probably because I've got a child now as well.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot realer to me, but I just don't find that necessarily attractive. I look at these young girls and I go, "You're very young. Like, you look very young."
Yeah, I realised that, especially going to, like, I took a few years out before I went to uni, and I just went back and just like 18-year-old freshers are really young people, and I sort of still,
How old
even
are you
like
now?
I'm 23 now, about to
Right.
be 24 in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
And even like in my early 20s, I was thinking, I still sort of thought of myself as like 18. You're like you are 8 for 18 until you are for about like 25, and then maybe the next change is around 30.
yeah,
But even as like in my early 20s, I was thinking, oh my gosh, 18-year-olds are idiots.
yeah.
They're just kids. They
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing, especially the ones that had like maybe like never lived away from home, never had a job or something like that. You think, oh my word, that was actually a child there.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I think as well. I think when you mature, and your brain matures, like the way you look at a situation matures. When you can see that they haven't taken that on board whatsoever, you see the young mind. That for me again is like, oh god, like, you are so young, and it overtakes any sort of prettiness that you have.
Yeah.
Like I've met lots of girls that I think like that are 18, 19, you're very pretty, but their lack of understanding towards the world and their lack of sort of maturity, just like, oh, you're just very, very young.
Yeah.
And that's that's.
Yeah, maybe that's. Yeah, I think a part of it is that we start feeling less attracted to the people that are like emotionally immature.
Yeah.
But also maybe it's like an evolutionary tactic. Like as our own looks are eventually going to decay.
Yeah.
The older and older we get, the worse and worse we're going to look. Probably.
Yeah.
Not always the case, but maybe you have to sort of change your aesthetic standards because the people on the opposite side have to change their aesthetic standards towards what you are.
Well, I think it's animal as well. There's a large part, like a male's job is to carry on. Well, in the animal kingdom, I think we've slightly evolved out of this, but it's to spread the seed, just carry on pumping out kids, until you can't. That's why, like a man is so blessed because they can choose to start a family at 50 years old and go, oh, I'll have a kid now.
Yeah.
And 50 years old is double my age. Like,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
well, not quite, but so you could have had several lives up to 50. You know, you could have you could have had several versions of being. You could have been a young whippersnapper into your 20s doing whatever, into your 30s doing whatever, into your 40s doing whatever, and then 50, I'll have kids.
Yeah.
Women can't do that.
No.
You know, like women have got a very finite amount of time. That it's the optimum time to have children. You know, like that's the best time. You know,
there is literally a biological clock on it. Basically.
Yeah. So that in itself shows there is a huge difference between men and women. You know, a man's life can be so different. Like Ezra could be, what would be so Ezra's 1 now. By the time I'm 50, he could be 22, and I choose to have another kid.
Yeah, imagine that.
Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, and it would be complete, and it wouldn't even necessarily be that unusual actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's so we've got a very different thing. So I imagine there's lots of men who just want to have that in them. You know, like have that just slaying them, and so the age range that you're going for never changes but as you get older.
Steve Coogan had an old bit saying, I get older every year, but my girlfriends don't. Yeah, the one thing that stays the same as my girlfriend's age, something like that. Yeah. I don't know.
Family Guy, wasn't he? He's like, I love college girls. Every year I get older and they stay the same age.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. Well, that is pretty spot on, to be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, men also. Like women, for example, when they get pregnant, they're sort of taken out of the game, whereas a guy could consistently impregnate a woman pretty much every day.
You could literally have an unlimited amount of people pregnant at the same time.
You could build within a year, you could pretty much build an army. Whereas a woman is very much out of the game.
Yeah, I managed to get 120 women pregnant this year.
Exactly. There's only going to be really maximum 8 of there and there at once.
If you were just that much of a player, do you know what I mean? Like you were just, and your only goal was to, my bloodline is gonna be around in 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You know, like that'd be quite a thing to take on. You know, and then your only goal is to impregnate people.
Yeah.
Just
I'm sure that's a thing. That's probably kind of like a sociopathic tendency that just you try and you lock into something so like
you never
instinctive.
meet any of them.
In primeval, it's just like my goal is to get my genes out there, because I guess the only reason any life exists is because, well, any sort of animals exist is because there's kind of a will, whether they know about it or not, whether they have cognitive thought about it or not, they have a will to reproduce. And we just happen to have got to the point where we can reproduce pretty easily, and quite a lot of our young don't die now. I mean, still a lot of them do. But loads of them don't, to the point that our population can grow and grow and grow, which doesn't really happen.
Rate, isn't it? Yeah. Can you imagine if we were still animals, and we had like a mating season where for like 3 weeks men are just running around, just hard dicks, and just fucking fighting each other, burst like the Purge, just bursting into houses, impregnating the nearest female, and then running out, and off we go, and just
well, that does almost. I don't know if you read a book called The Handmaid's Tale. It's recently been made into a Channel 4 series. Very good, by the way.
No, I haven't. No, don't.
Well, basically, it's sort of vague enough as to like what causes it, but it sort of leads towards like the way we're living, pollution in the water and things like that. To a lot of the population become infertile.
Right.
To the point that
Gender 21, those.
Is it?
Conspiracy.
Okay, right, we'll see. Well, I think it'll probably happen eventually, but maybe it'll be a good thing. Anyway, so there's only a sort of a small percentage of the population that are actually fertile. And these people don't really have a choice in it, but the girls certainly don't. They're kind of put into this like deeply like religious community. The society becomes very religious again, or I think what's more likely is it's the easiest way to kind of explain what's going on, to force these girls to do what they have to do, because you sort of put the fear of God into them. And basically their job is to sort of live with a family, and then there will be a season, there'll be like a festival almost, and that is like their kind of mating season. You do it where you're together, well, you don't have to, I guess, but the sort of protagonist in it, the wife and husband are there together, and she's sort of in between them, as though he's kind of impregnating her as like a conduit to his wife.
Right.
And then basically you sort of, eventually the goal is to get pregnant and just sort of pump out children. You get sort of moved from family to family as kind of like a breeding device, when there's few enough people that are fertile that they kind of have to be, otherwise humanity will end.
So like a wet nurse for babies, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's
it
called?
The Handmaid's Tale. It's definitely worth a watch or a read. Depends what you've got more time for.
Yeah, that is crazy. Because you'd have these affluent people that can't have children. Speaking of which, there's my boy.
Nice.
They'd want kids.
Yeah.
And so just like they do with organs, they do with kids. And this is a different conversation for a different day. But David Rockefeller had like 9 heart transplants in his life. I think it's 8 or 9.
Right. Okay.
He was pretty lucky on that list, you know.
Yeah. How did he get so high up on the list every time?
Yeah, just interesting. But anyway,
I think it's because the family harvested hearts
yeah,
for him.
Or they just
not even just bumping up a list.
They just get the homeless,
yeah,
just drag one off the street, and they've probably grown a clone version of David Rockefeller. Actually, no, because they'd just be him, wouldn't they? He'd never die, would he?
Oh, that's maybe that's just how he's going to achieve immortality.
Well, they grew a bladder recently for a woman,
and it worked.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but it's only like a sack of skin, basically. That's what a bladder is.
Okay, so that's a pretty simple one to do. It doesn't need many valves or anything.
Yeah,
so.
it's a good start.
Yeah,
we talked about cultured meat on this podcast before, and that's
I heard it.
So when we can grow meat and grow steak, I imagine we're not too far from growing an organ, or growing. So maybe the rich would just be able to just have it growing, like.
At all times, you can sort of have a backup organ just in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, because you wouldn't need to grow a human, just grow the organ, that fits you.
Is that? I mean, that kind of is sort of, I guess, what stem cell stuff is to an extent, isn't it? It's just like, can you get replacement stuff?
Well, from what I gather, like we're decades away from completely revolutionising what we understand as healthcare, and there's a lot of people that aren't getting knee replacements or hip replacements or aren't having treatments because affluent doctors are like, just hold on, just wait, like you've got time. Like if you can wait 2 years, the knee that will be available in 2 years compared to the knee that's available now, and the procedure will just be poles apart. Like, so people that are elderly and like Alzheimer's setting in, or their eyes are starting to go, whatever, it's like, just hold on, like it's coming, like this technology is going to change, and
it's going to change stuff.
It's fascinating.
That is sort of when we get closer and closer to immortality. I mean, if you can just start replacing organs as they fail, is it ethical even? Do you think?
Well, there's this. They were talking about like quantum medication. So, from what I gather, I'm probably going to bodge this, but you can get tiny robots. Like if you could make a quantum-sized robot, a tiny little cell-sized robot, and it was in solution, and they're designed to regulate your body and fix it. You drink this solution, and it just wanders around your body, helps internal bleeding, or you've got cholesterol build-ups in your body, lesions, cancers, viruses, everything. Like it's designed to just regulate your body to keep it healthy, Right. And they reckon that'd add 20 or 30 years to a human's life automatically, And so
sounds like the Nano Doctor from Rick and Morty. Maybe someone listening might get that reference. If they do, they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, Rick and Morty's coming out soon, isn't it?
It is.
July 30th. I cannot wait. That episode was one of the best, probably is the best ever cartoon episode I've ever seen. Really?
The Nano Doctor one?
No, the newest episode.
Oh, I see. It's exciting stuff.
Oh, it's just absolute genius, and spoiler alert, when he I love saying that because it means my 9 listeners are going to have to pay attention.
Yeah.
So when he teleports the government ship like into the prison, the Rick ship into the prison. It was incredible.
I think that was a really clever bit where he collapsed the entire galactic government by changing the 1 to a 0 in their currency.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, obviously, it's maybe a little bit oversimplified, but it does bring you to the point, and they're just sort of after anything real. Yeah. Anything that actually exists, like give me your jacket, things like that. I think Rick and Morty is spot on for that, for sort of pointing out in a really ridiculous way the sort of the ludicrousness of some of the things that we take as completely standard. Yeah, Rick and Morty. It seems, I don't know whether you'd call that meta or like, it just seems like a level above.
Yeah.
Very analytical. I like it.
They're very smart, the writers. Harmon,
Dan Harmon.
Dan Harmon. You've watched Harmontown?
No.
That's an interesting, and also he does this podcast where they play Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
And have different guests on, so it's the same 4 characters on their adventures, and then just a special guest comes in and plays a different character. Me and my friends bought Dungeons and Dragons and played it as a 28-year-old man.
Okay.
So it's always been something I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And we just got stupid high and just told the story, and it's hilarious.
What do you, for a layman such as myself?
Yeah.
What is it basically like the closest you can get to like a computer game? Can you just do anything?
Yeah,
you just make up scenarios.
It's an RPG, yeah. And so it's like, for example, you get a character sheet, tells you who you are, what you are, some of your strong points, and you get stats which are relative to the dice rolls you have to get. They all adds up together. There's like a bit of maths involved.
Yeah.
And then you've got to fill in the gaps. So you've got to name yourself. It's part of your backstory you've got to make up. And
what did you call yourself? Sunnington.
I was actually the dungeon master.
Oh, of course you are. Yeah, classic.
And then you had all your characters, and then they tell you there's a story. You've got this book with all the different bad guys in it and their stats. And so the dungeon master just builds a scenario, and then you just say what you want to do. So you could literally just go, I want to run outside, and then they go and climb that tree and jump to the other tree. And I'm like, and the dungeon master has to work out what you'd have to roll to jump from tree to tree.
Oh my gosh.
And then you have to roll the dice. If you roll a 6, you miss the branch, you fall out and you twat yourself.
Oh.
If you roll a 9, you gracefully land and go from there. So it's really down to chance, and it makes it hilarious. Especially
so very little of it, apart from your character, is actually predetermined. You've got to have like a relatively good imagination just to get anywhere with it.
There is a path, and you have to take it serious-ish. You have to prepare yourself for it. You can't just jump on and just crack on. You've got to know your shit, because it makes the game funnier.
Okay.
The more you know about yourself as a person in the world,
right,
the better the game is.
Oh wow.
We only played like 2 or 3 times, and it always ends with just being stupid high and just
leading to nothingness.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
But
how is it meant to end? Can you win?
There is an end. There's a whole story, but it'd probably take you, if you were to do the whole book, 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow.
It's something
so you've really got to settle in for a sesh.
Yeah, I mean, we went through the woods. We got ambushed by some goblins. They killed some of the goblins and interrogated one of them, and it got pretty dark. Like, they were pretty dark to that goblin to get the information, because they kept on rolling, and he wouldn't tell them the information just because the luck of the draw. They kept them rolling a 4 instead of a 9 or whatever it was, and so he was just like not giving up the information. So they got darker and darker.
Oh, no.
And I'm not going to repeat it because it was pretty awful.
Did you get the information in the end?
I think they did, yeah, but the goblin did not have a good evening.
Nice. There's a thing, I don't know if you're into classic Scottish comedy.
Sometimes.
But there's a guy called Limmy who is
I know Limmy, yeah.
He's absolutely hilarious. I don't know if you ever watched the Limmy show. I don't think it was ever actually put out on our terrestrial TV, because it was made for BBC, and then it was sort of decided to be too Scottish, so it only went out in BBC Scotland because his accent is that thick.
I think I've seen when he gets on the bus to go somewhere, and he's on the bus.
Yeah, possibly. I think
so.
One. Well, there's a character that he does. It's sort of like a recurring character in the sketch show called Falconhoof.
Right.
And I think it's the funniest thing he does. It's absolutely... It's basically, he's the sort of dungeon master type thing on a phone-in version of that called Adventure Quest.
Right.
And he's like, "Welcome, Travers. I will be your guide on your quest." And it's stuff like that.
Great
and
accent.
It just... Thanks very much. And it just always sort of veers off in the most horrible ways. Like, there's just people sort of calling up, it's like, say, £4 a minute, and they're just calling up sort of annoyed or bored or whatever. And he just sort of riffs off these things, and it's absolutely hilarious.
Right,
yeah, it's worth a watch. You should make a note of it, because...
the thing is, we can't play on here because of my giant reach. YouTube will chuck us off immediately, we can't plagiarise stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth listening to. It's worth taking away. In fact,
I will.
As a recommendation to your listeners, I sort of forget that we're actually talking to anyone else here. But
yeah, all 9 of you.
Yeah, listen to Falconhoof, Limmy, and also what was the thing we were talking about? Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty is excellent. I love a cartoon.
Yeah.
There's a cartoon called Animals at the moment.
I've not
2
seen
series of it, and it's just really blunt and about the animals basically sort of human, but in their own little quirky ways. And so there's like these 2 lab rats. who have been given these drugs, and so they're completely off their heads all the time. But they remember they've got these shattered memories of living in a sewer and having a family and all this stuff, and it's really dark. And they've got this ball of like hair and shit and stuff that's one of their girlfriends, because they're in this drug-addled rage all the time, like drug-addled world all the time. They live this life with her as a girlfriend, and she moves and talks, and then they have an affair, and then she has an affair with the other rat, and so this other rat goes into like a spiral and stops taking the drugs for like a little while,
right?
And then he becomes clearer and sees the truth and remembers his past, that they used to live in this sewer, and he's trying to convince his mate that
they're just living in the sewer,
yeah, and because they don't remember anything but this life.
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's hilarious, and it's really quite deep and quite dark.
Oh wow, what's it called?
Animals.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll dig that out. I'm always looking for new cartoon recommendations.
It's really good.
Yeah, nice.
And it's lots of other things like that.
It sounds a bit like a game that recently came out. Now, I don't know the name of the game, and I don't really know the premise very well. So you'd think, based on that little information, I wouldn't now try and describe it to you.
Right.
But I will anyway.
Excellent.
So basically, there's people sort of living in this world. I think it's sort of quite sort of like a utopian kind of world.
Yeah.
But you have to take a form of like medication. Now there comes a point where your character sort of chooses, or for some reason stops taking this medication, and it becomes quite a sort of weird, like dystopian, gothic, weird game. And like over time, if you sort of come off these drugs, but from what I understand, the storyline is like well written enough that it's actually like interesting just to play through and sort of see. Even if it's not like amazing gameplay where you're doing mad shit and sort of killing people, just the actual like world that they've created in and of itself.
Well, I think that's the society we live in, because you spend your whole life distracting yourself and busy, and I've got a social life, got kids, got a job, got ambitions, got goals, got shopping to do, bills to pay.
Yeah.
So distracted. But every now and again, when you sort of look up and you look at the news, look at society, have a think about the world, think about who we are as a people, and you go, it's all pretty dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like our whole society is literally propped up on poor brown people, and that's what we've all sort of agreed to get along with, like most of our technology is built by people that earn very little, and we all just sort of get on with it. Like all of our food, most of our industry, like it's all just mopped up and looked after, especially in like when you get a little bit more affluent in the cities, and everything we do is propped up by people that have less than us, and then we prop up people that have more than us. You know, so I'm not sat there thinking I'm sort of any superiority. And I'm just
If anything, we're pretty low down, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're the ones doing a lot of the propping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like I was saying it the other day that I wasn't particularly rich growing up. Now, I've had to revise that statement, because I wasn't particularly rich compared to the people I was surrounded by. Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Like the school I went to, I was one of the poor kids at that school. You know, in the village that I lived in, or the area that I lived in, I was one of the poorest people in that area. You know, not the poorest, but I was in that bracket.
Yeah.
Now, that's nothing compared to someone living currently in Syria. You know, that's nothing compared to someone living in all manner of places, or in this country, for example. But
well, wealth is very subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, my experience was that of someone who had less.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. So what you're saying is things like animals and things like, what was the other thing we were just talking about? They're like basically a metaphor. That game, for example, the game that I couldn't think of, you're saying it's just sort of, could be a metaphor. It gets a little bit like Plato's Cave.
Yeah.
We're just seeing sort of a version of something that's sort of all an illusion, all like a distraction to what's actually going on.
I do sometimes feel like that, though. I sometimes feel like we're just on the cusp of something brilliant. Like as a people, you know, like you look at the technology we have, and then what we actually do with it. You know, we're so close to a few adjustments, don't get probably quite large ones, and we'll be doing it right. You know, like for everything and everyone, for the planet, for the animals, for people. But at the moment we're not. But we've got all the tools we need. We've got everything we need to be brilliant, to be really, really like. It doesn't matter what your faith, your religion, your beliefs, whatever it is. Like if we just went don't be a dick to anything. Like, be nice to stuff. Be kinder as a humanity. Like, look after the earth better. Like, as a standard.
Yeah.
Look after animals better as a standard. Look after each other better as a standard. It's all very reachable goals.
Yeah.
You know,
we have the tools to do it.
yes, and more so than we've ever had.
Yeah.
You know, and the world is moving forward. Like we're saying, child mortality is down. More people are being able to educate themselves. More people are learning that it's probably not nice to just have slaves or to treat women badly or to have really far fanatical beliefs. Like, more and more people are learning this,
Yeah.
like, thanks to the internet. So you sort of hope that means that we are moving towards this. I know utopia isn't the exact definition like something that is never achievable. I think is that.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. From what I know of it, it's just like kind of the paradise that sort of a perfect community could achieve. But yeah, maybe within the definition of it, it says that it's not actually achievable. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
maybe by definition it isn't, because a sort of your paradise is kind of subjective. So, for example, like you could say, utopia would be where everyone's got sort of free speech.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true, because some people use free speech really horribly and to be really nasty to each other based on their race, whatever, things like that.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to say it. And this is what's happening to the left. I have an argument with liberals all the time.
Okay.
That this whole punch a Nazi ideal, like, who suddenly has the license to say who's a Nazi and not? You know, like, just because someone holds a view that's not the same as yours, what gives you the right to punch someone in the face?
Yeah.
You know, and there is this huge liberal movement of, like, I went to Margate, White Lives Matter. From a photographer point of view.
Okay.
I did some filming, I took some photos,
Yeah.
I interviewed some of the Antifa, I interviewed some of the guys from the White Lives Matter, and EDL members and things like that.
Okay. I reckon you were just caught there and this is just your excuse for what you're doing there. You're actually rallying.
No, I drove 3.5 hours there and did the whole thing. I was supposed to have someone go with me, but it ended up being on my own.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The excitement of it all was
Wow.
because it got a bit violent.
Yeah.
There was hundreds of police, like probably about 200 EDO guys, hundreds of Antifa, hundreds of them, which is anti-fascist, and loads of people, spectators, you know, but mostly police, and they marched up and down, and it was just, I got knocked over by a horse. It was just amazing, you know, like hustle and bustle, incredible. But what I found there was like, there's something hilarious about Antifa chanting about freedom and rights and beliefs while telling someone else to shut up and go home. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I understand that point of view, and it is a good one. I'm sure it's one that's been had before, but the way I see it, you can't. Your rights can't extend so widely to the point that they start infringing upon other people. So in the same way that you could say, like...
But isn't that exactly what you're doing by saying Nazis shouldn't have a platform?
Well, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a platform. I'm saying if you want to put out something that you're saying and people sort of choose to come to it of their own volition because they are like-minded, then there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I wouldn't say, like, shut down right-wing sites because they harbour these views that I don't agree with. That's an opinion, but there's a difference between having free speech and getting what you believe out there and, like, going up to someone in their face and saying, like, go back to your own country.
Yeah, agreed.
I think you have a right not to be told that.
Yes, but also we're entering into a very interesting point in history where I was brought up and still hold the belief that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Okay.
And so I can have dialogue with someone that's saying things that are horrible because I'm a grown man, you know, and I take it on board that yes, they're being horrible, but any real racist that I sit down and have a conversation with about race, I'm going to destroy you. You know, like everything you say, I can win at. You know, like, and so surely that's the best forum to have it. Like, if someone wants to have hate speech, your Milo Yiannopoulos of the world. If he wants to be really right, let's sit down and let's have a debate about it. You know, because that's where the battle can commence. You haven't got to punch anyone.
But what if you're not a grown man who is able to sort of, like, verbally destroy someone like that? What if you're, like, an 8-year-old kid who's just moved somewhere and someone's saying go back to your own country.
Yeah, of course. Then there's also that aspect where does speech become verbal assault? You know, which is an interesting one. But don't get me wrong. Hate speech is awful. Like, just be nice to each other. It's very easy to be kind. You know, it's really easy, and people aren't, and that's something that we should be able to look at. But you've also got to bear in mind that at some point in my life, I've harboured beliefs that if you caught me at that moment, are wrong, and I've grown out of it. Okay. And so like there wasn't much ethnicity when I grew up.
Okay.
So when I was first introduced to it, you know, like it's an automatic thing. Like as a human being, you're like, oh, it's different.
Yeah.
You then realise that doesn't matter, you know, like, and the more people you meet, the more you understand that humans are humans. Like, literally, that's it. Yeah. Some are good, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. No one is good or bad. And, like, people are just people in moments of time.
Yeah.
And so I look at someone who harbours racist ideals, and I think, hopefully, at some point you're going to look back and go, oh God, you'll cringe at that day that you shouted at that foreigner to leave your country. You know, you'll look back as a father, like now you're a father or whatever. You know, now you've grown up a bit and you go, oh, I cannot believe I was that human being.
Yeah.
You know, but I believe that's a path that
I'm sure some of them do. You even hear stories of, like, there was some leader of like a KKK gang who was just sort of gradually, I think he sort of terms it as like gradually worn down by this black preacher in the area who's just sort of eventually showed enough compassion. But not everyone has got like the tolerance or patience to be nice to that kind of person for long enough.
But should they have the opportunity to? Do you know what I mean? Like, should everyone have the opportunity to change?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think you should just write people off as something.
I imagine punching someone in the face because they harbour certain views isn't going to get you anywhere. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I think there has to be this, that people need to be able to own their own being as such that violence isn't the answer always at all. You know, sometimes I think someone needs a slap, you know, and I think sometimes it's very, like, I remember when I was 18 and I thought I was the hardest thing in the world. Yeah. Like, I was fucking hard. Yeah. You know? I was really fucking hard.
Okay, and were you hard?
And then, well, yeah, this is the story. I was out and about, you know, drinking, being hard.
Yeah.
And then I got into an argument with a grown man, like a 36-year-old man,
a real man,
for example, you know. And I was this skinny little knobhead with a big gob before he was fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you soon learn that you're
you
not.
Yeah, fair one.
You know, I remember some friends of mine were out, and a friend of mine, just like me, just like an 18-year-old knobhead, said to this grown man, like, you want to fuck with me, mate? I'm fucking hard. And before he'd finished the sentence, this grown man had whooped him, you know? Yeah. Just, and then you need that.
Yeah,
you know,
retrospectively, do you think that was a good thing in your life?
Because if I'd never had those opportunities to get a good ass whooping and realised that I'm not hard, then
you're not Billy Big Biscuits.
I'd have gone through life still going, I'm fucking pretty tough, mate. Yeah. I don't know if you know about me. I mean, I've done zero training, and yet I'm still pretty fucking hard.
Okay.
I don't fight because no one wants to fight me. You know,
no,
I've got no knowledge of martial arts whatsoever. But
you just know, in your heart of hearts, you're well armed.
And then I learned.
You learnt the hard way.
Slapped around.
Or maybe you learnt the only way.
Yeah. And
maybe you can't be talked out of that.
Yeah, and I don't think you could. Like if you think you're hard, if someone sits down and goes, "You're not hard," you're gonna go, "Whoa."
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. And those are the kind of things like thinking that you're well hard and actually being like a gobby little shite.
Yeah.
Or being a racist. We can sort of. It's pretty easy to like moralise over them and say like we know which one the wrong one is. Being racist is the wrong one, so we can work out how to combat that. But what if it's something where there isn't such a like clear cut idea of like who's in the wrong? Like racism's a bit of an easy one because with our sort of minds now and actually sort of understanding how the world works, you understand that being a racist isn't very good. But that's not a very revolutionary thought. So what about the things where it's not clear cut? Say, for example, like being more like economically liberal or conservative and not necessarily follow with being like liberal or conservative just in society standards. Or
I think we're seeing the death of the ideas of left and right. I think I am at heart a hippie who believes you've got the right to bear arms. You know?
Wow.
Like, I think as a sovereign human being that is a grown ass adult, you should have the right to do whatever you fucking like. You
Yeah.
know, whether that's drugs or hold a gun license or want humans to look after each other.
So you're basically like an anarchist almost.
Well, no,
you don't even fall
I think
into
these
left and
labels
right.
are silly, and now you've got political parties that aren't miles apart from each other. They're not really, you know. Like I know Jeremy Corbyn's in a revival of that, but
Yeah.
because of that reason, because people were so fed up of like it all being exactly the same, basically. Like for a long time, I honestly think, and as much as Corbyn's a nice guy, he's got a fantastic PR team, like genius. Like
Yeah.
the fact they sent him to Glastonbury, the fact that they have these well-placed posts, like perfect pictures of him buying a big issue, which just so happened to be taken by a very good photographer at the exact moment he was handing the money over, is either one of those shots that ends up in National Geographic as photo of the year, or a very well-timed incident. Now, let me finish.
Okay, go
So
on.
they sat down, the Labour Party, and they went, right, they called it very, very well.
Yeah.
People have had enough.
Yeah.
Theresa May walks into leadership without being voted in, without even being discussed. Like, Cameron didn't have the guts to man up and take it on the chin that he'd lost.
Yeah.
You know, so he just walks away.
So he got
and
out.
that's okay. I don't understand why that was okay, A. She then saddles up, like, decrepit and yet strong and stable, right? and then just makes it even worse. And so people are like, had enough. Like, we've had enough of this. Like, she opposed gay marriage in 2013. She's heavily religious, which shouldn't exist in politics.
Yeah.
And then so the backswing of that is Jeremy Corbyn, you know, and they called it very well.
He's the response needed to that. Well, to be honest, the Labour Party didn't call it very well. I think that's why it's so exciting.
Well,
it's because no one seems to have called it. None of the Labour Party really wanted him there. There was a vote of no confidence. He got back in with an even bigger majority of like the actual members, like myself. I don't want to lay my cards on the table too much, but I was voting from even back then, and he seems to have like captured the public imagination in such a way that the party didn't. Like, no one called it. Everyone was saying it was going to be an absolute write-off. Even the Labour Party was sort of fretting, thinking, well, if this general election, we're done. We're going to need to already start thinking about like who's going to take over as leader. And it just sort of, it goes to show that maybe this idea of left and right, although it kind of went away just because everyone sort of drifted to the middle ground, like, say, for example, Tony Blair, David Cameron, they were just sort of just on one's... I'd say Ed Miliband a bit less so, because I think he sort of started drawing back to the left because, you know, his dad, Ralph, big Marxist thinker, there's no way he didn't take away some of those like Marxist or at least heavily socialist ideals away with him.
It's all the labels that get to me. It's all it's the second you label it, I'm just like, because that's what stops us a lot of the time, is putting something into a category or putting someone into a label. Like, stops the requirement to think about the person, because they go, he's a lefty, and there he is, and that's done. You know, like.
But most people, I think, do fit into those categories. I honestly think if people told me...
I don't think I fit into that category.
That's why you're unusual. No, well, I would consider myself...
You don't care about it. Like,
well, it's more just like, what's the point? We're here by complete chance. There's nothing we can do to impact. We're here for a brief speck of time. What's the point in anything?
No,
and that is...
I'm not a nihilist.
I think, well, that's pretty much true. We are just pretty much here by chance. It's just, we're just sort of a speck on the timeline of humanity or existence. We don't really do anything that impacts anything on that huge a scale. Everything's pointless.
Well, yeah.
But I think you're something outside of that, even, because I think most people, like I was going to say, you could tell me about 3 things sort of their views, and I could probably tell you 10 more of their views straight away.
Right.
I think 9 times out of 10, or even more than that, that is true.
Right.
You just happen to sort of not fall into the category of, say, for example, you want to be like a gun-wielding liberal pot smoker. You don't fit into a category, but that is unusual.
I believe that you just have the right to exist. You know, like, no one... Like, I honestly think, right, and I know that this is... it's very difficult to justify the argument, but if you don't want to go to work, right, you shouldn't have to go to work.
Okay.
Like if you're honestly, if you're a sovereign human being and you've chosen to sit on your ass and watch Jeremy Kyle for the rest of your existence, it might be a sad existence.
Yeah.
But who can tell you not to? If you choose to check out and eat a bottle of paracetamol, like, who's to tell you can't?
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
Like, people. just as much. Like I think people waste their lives just in the same way that people spend their lives working for an insurance company until they're 60, and then by the time they reach 60 and they're of retirement age, all their energy to do all the things they wanted to do is gone.
It's gone.
That's just
they
as
used
mad.
it on getting the
that's
the
just
means
as
to do
mad.
it.
Yeah, so
Well, that even like that idea, and not to try and keep putting you into boxes, but that is like a pretty typical like neo-Marxist thought, is that when you think about Marxism, it's like unless we as the working class sees the means of production, nothing's going to change, and we basically are always sort of within this. We're just sort of being distracted by our jobs, by things like that, so we can just really sort out the 1% who. We bring up things like Rockefeller, things like that, but I don't even think it's them. The fact that we know their names, for example, I don't think they're the top dog. But there is kind of like a neo-Marx argument to that. It's like, actually, maybe we do have the eventual power, because we can just back out. We can just get a bottle of paracetamol and say, like, I am now your means of production. I'm out of it. Or, like, I'm just going to sit on my sofa and watch Jeremy Kyle. I'm taking myself out of the loop.
Well, yeah, I think a government needs the people more than the people need the government. But in the same way, we're tricked into thinking otherwise. You know, if you say that to someone, that I don't think you should have to work, they laugh at you.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do then? It's like, well, most jobs that exist are stupid. Most jobs that exist are there to prop up an industry that doesn't necessarily need to exist. Like intermediaries. There's so many jobs that are just an intermediary between the user and the user and the industry.
Yeah.
That just the people in the middle that sell that shit, like that none of it needs to exist, and so your whole life is based upon, I've got to go to those sales figures for so and so for Wednesday, and I've got to reach these targets. And,
take a step back. What you're actually doing.
What is it? You're just moving shit around, you know, and then saying things and then being tired all the time. You know, like, so how silly is that compared to someone going, do you know what? If I sit on my arse, the government actually pays me to do it.
Well, I think that's true. I think our idea of what being unemployed is has to change, because there was a point where, say for example, probably our parents' generation, you could essentially just go from job to job because there were enough jobs that needed doing, and not enough people to necessarily do them. But now with automation, which I think is a good thing, I think we should bring in pretty much everything that should be automated now. But only if our view of being unemployed changes, because there are now more people than there are jobs to do.
Yeah.
So it's got to get to a point where it's actually okay to be unemployed, because they're literally computers can sort of do enough of it for us, and we take a step back and actually realise, I don't actually need to be doing those things.
Yeah, well, they were saying transport is about to change. It is deliveries and 18-wheeler haulage and long distance, because they've been trialling driverless lorries. Yeah, and it's great. You know, they don't need a tachometer. You don't need to have rest as such. Because there isn't a human being, and there's a lot the sensors are so much better than a human being that's been driving for 10 hours, you know, so the risk is a lot lower. And so they reckon, I can't remember, but it's a decent percent, like 5 to 10% of every country's workforce exists in transportation and haulage and things. And so when that gets taken over by driverless cars, that and then that knock-on effect, and then just we're gonna have so many people that are gonna be out of jobs and gonna be unreplaceable. Like isn't gonna be the industry that exists, because a lot of the working class jobs as such can be automised a lot more effectively and efficiently by
the factory that builds them and the truck that takes it to the place it's going. It's all going to be an automated process.
And there'll be an element of maintenance to it, but nothing compared to the scale that you need to carry it on in the first place. So what do you do? And have you heard of universal basic income?
I've come across the concept, but I wouldn't say I'm really that familiar with it.
So I've already talked about this once, but I was pretty drunk when I was talking about it.
Okay, fair.
But so the idea is, let's say for the UK, for example, every person that turns 18 is given £16,000 a year.
Okay.
As a standard,
right,
for nothing. So then you could take that, sit on your ass, and watch Jeremy Kyle all day.
Yeah.
Or you can go to work and chase ambitions and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
This require a culture where education be free, and this requires a culture where people are a lot more collective in the way they look after each other.
Yeah.
So everyone agrees that when you start working, you get taxed heavily. So you might earn 20 grand a year and get taxed 8 of that.
Yeah.
And that's in the understanding, so everyone gets the universal basic income.
Okay.
Because that means you could then go, I'll work for 5 years, or what I do is I'll study. And so while I'm studying, my education's free, and I've got that 16 grand.
Yeah.
Brilliant, you know? And someone's propping me up. Someone else is helping me to live this life by paying higher taxes.
Yeah.
So that when I've educated myself and I've got my dream job, I can then do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that collective ideal.
That is, well, I mean, that is basically like the utopian view of what like socialism is and what it could be. I don't think, I think that is an absolute dream, but you'd have to have a sort of a society that is like giving out the idea that the honour is in providing it for the people, as opposed
everything
to
would have to change. You know,
all it takes is one person to go, well, if I'm putting all this hard work in and that person isn't putting the hard work in, but I'm still propping them up, what am I doing? And then straight away you drift back to like a capitalism, a form of like, I want what I made, I want to keep it. I'm not in education anymore, so I don't want to fund it. I don't need healthcare, so I don't want to fund it, things like that. The mentality of society would have to change so much.
The general consensus is most people would just not work, you know, and then it wouldn't sustain itself. The economy would crash and it would fall apart. Now, I think that's because a lot of people I know, like I always say, my dream job is to not work. Look, that's simple as that. You know, like I don't see the point of having to prove to my friends and family that I'm special or I'm better because I get successful at doing a job for someone else that's really good. Yeah. You know, like to me, I just want to exist. You know, if I could just exist and be and self-improve, but nothing to prove to anyone else. You know, I don't need to. I don't want to be a high flyer. But I need the money that a high flyer has, so therefore I've got to go and do that. You know, so that's what I'm chasing, success as such. But if success was in front of you because I wouldn't have to do it, then that'd be perfect. Like if this podcast was my job, that'd be just the best thing in the world.
Imagine, what a dream.
Exactly. But that's a very, very difficult, and most people have to strive. And so the idea that someone might not have to when you do struggle is very hard to take on board.
Yeah.
But we need a whole different culture, because people that I speak to who work and have worked all their lives, which is very admirable. You talk about this and they go, well, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I wouldn't know what to do. You know, so imagine if I wake up tomorrow, I've got a healthy bank balance and nowhere to go. And not that I can suddenly just go on holiday, but every month I get enough to pay my rent and have some disposable income.
Yeah.
So, and that just comes in. So I'd be like, right, what do I do? Now for me, I know what I'd do. I'd train more, I'd read more, I'd educate myself more, I'd spend more time with my son, my family, people that I care about.
Nice.
But for a lot of people, they've never had a chance to cultivate hobbies and interests because they've been busy working or busy surviving, busy existing. So it'd all stop and they'd be like, I'll drink, or...
I think there's an element of truth to that. I think some people just need a place to go. You need something to like sort of get up for in the morning that you're obliged to do. Otherwise you won't do an awful lot. I would become so lazy if I didn't need to do anything, I think. Like you just said, I don't know. It would be a strange sort of, strange sort of society that would like accept it. I mean, it would be a beautiful one.
I'd get high a lot more as well, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably counterproductive.
Yeah.
But
I think that would be
common. Right.
That would be commonplace, though, I bet.
Yeah.
I don't know, some people, what about, say, things like food? I mean, I don't know how far, like, back you would take society, but say, it's not everyone's perfect ideal to, like, grow the food that we eat.
Yeah.
Farm the food that we eat. So when they stop doing it, what do we do? Do we have to start farming our own food? And that in itself is a difficult enough job.
Well,
that's pretty time consuming.
Well, let's say, for example, like, it's 10 years down the line, you know, cultured meat is now a thing.
Yeah.
You can now make it very cheaply and effectively.
Excellent.
So you'd want an industry where the culture of meat is grown locally sourced meat.
Yeah.
So that there is an industry that's required to sort of ship it around. You know, if it's all the same culture meat, like for example, at the moment, 90% or something stupid of all the beef grown in the UK is shipped out because it's worth more in America than it is in the
British
UK.
beef, I see.
And then we import all of the Argentinian beef into our country because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, that wouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that seems pretty nonsensical.
Yeah, so then these huge industries that are huge carbon footprints are really horrible for the animals would vanish. Like the numbers of cows and pigs and chickens would fucking plummet because you can now make a chicken and make cultured chicken. Yeah. You know, which is another great thing, because I'm not saying I don't don't dislike chickens. I don't want to eradicate them, but we won't need them when we're eating them. You know, I said last time that I wonder how long it would take if we just stopped breeding them again. How long it would take for us to just eat them all? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, probably pretty quick.
Yeah, I imagine.
I think we'd. Although I think we'd just, start growing our own. Can you do cultured meat with chicken yet? I think they're way off with that, aren't they?
I think they. They've got like versions of. They've got different coloured cultured meat.
Oh wow, nice.
But yeah, so let's say you got cultured meat, and then you grew all the vegetables locally for your community, and things like, have you seen these high-rise hydroponic skyscrapers?
Yeah.
So imagine the floor space of a skyscraper, with 20 floors. But each floor is a hydroponic garden that grows veg.
Okay. But who monitors that? Because you can't be. I imagine some people would still like have jobs in the society.
But I imagine that would be some people's ambition in life to work in that garden.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, how interesting can it be?
Like, a really romantic ideal for me. I've got a little veg patch outside, you know, and I don't do enough with it, and everything always fucking eats it. So I see that as quite karmic. Like, I grow vegetables for the animals.
Oh yeah, nice, excellent work.
Yeah, because I've had that there for all summer since we first moved in, and I've never eaten a single thing off it.
Nice.
It's always gone.
Okay.
Everything gets eaten by the animals, and so that's just me feeding the animals. But anyway, I have this romantic idea that I'd love to garden. I'd love to have grounds I had to upkeep, a bit of tree surgery.
Yeah, I've got a bit in that in me.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? That's very romantic for me. So if I lived in a society where I didn't have to work as much, I'd happily do a day or two a week in the farm.
Yeah.
Just tending to the vegetables.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if you, let's say for example, you are required to give 2 days, 16 hours a week of service to either maintenance of the computers or machines or whatever it is, and then there's veg planting. Some people choose to be counsellors. Some people choose to be part of the political system. It's funny actually. I read this thing the other day when I was scrolling through conspiracy nonsense. This guy who went to 2748 or whatever it was, so hundreds of years down the line.
Okay, yeah.
And it's basically now that you have. It's fascinating. Like I just got a disclaimer. I don't necessarily think this guy's talking the truth, but it was fascinating what he said.
Yeah.
That they have. You now live very differently. You can live for hundreds of years. The way we have nutrients is very different. It's literally like drinks that you take every day, and that's got everything you need in it. And then the most fascinating thing was politics, justice, and law are all controlled. It goes city by city, and some cities are like on machines that can move, and some cities fly, and some cities are fixed,
right.
and you can independently move between them all and do what you like.
Okay.
But each city is controlled by this levitating crystal, which is artificially intelligent and thousands of times more intelligent than the human brain, and understands exactly what each individual within this city needs to exist.
Wow.
to be optimum.
Okay.
It then communicates with every other crystal in every other city to create perfection. It also has complete control of the city, so when anyone commits a crime, it will call you down for a meeting and go, "Oh, yesterday I saw you pissing on the bins."
Yeah.
Like sort it out, mate.
That sounds like the kind of thing the Crystal would have to take you up on.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then Crystal catches you murdering someone. He's like, "I saw you do it, man."
Yeah.
Like
I'm all seeing.
Yeah. You've got to go to Crystal jail or whatever.
Okay. Crystal Maze.
Yeah, Crystal Maze.
You can escape out of it.
Yeah. And I just thought that was a fascinating idea, that because one of the problems with war and justice and politics is humans, that we're so fallible, and you can't have this. Like as much as Barack Obama looked like the perfect statesman, he just wasn't. You know, like time proved that. Whereas a crystal isn't trying to impress anyone. The crystal knows all, sees all, and it can't just go, let's be moral by killing you all. No, let's lower crime by killing all the bad guys. It's got to understand more. So you have to build a pretty good crystal computer levitating thing. But
I think when
it
reaches that point of complete like artificial intelligence, complete almost like self-awareness, I don't think it'd be that interested in maintaining us.
Well, yeah, it's like when they talk about making a logical, artificially intelligent computer, like Sam Harris was saying that DeepMind, who is owned by Google, which is a company that makes artificial intelligence.
Right.
They reckon they're not far away from creating this processor. Like, it's an artificially intelligent processor that's got processing speed of 20,000 times the human brain per week. So it does 20,000 years of human thinking in 1 week, I think it is.
Right. Okay.
So
that's pretty impressive.
You could give it a question and then come back to it in a week, and it'd have the answer that 20,000 years of human thinking would have come to it. And it's just a processor. But he's like, if you said to it, how do we stop spam, for example, it might just come back to you and go, well, kill all humans.
Because it would.
Yeah.
That would stop spam.
Yeah, that's the most logical way to go about it. So we've got to be so careful when we're making artificial intelligence, because we don't frame it right. Most things end with just, well, you are not required.
Yeah.
If you ask them how to lower carbon emissions.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
That's the thing, I think. Well, maybe, because I think humans, we've kind of become too intelligent for our own good. Like, the fact that we now can breed on such a level and live for so long because of how advanced our brains are, that we can actually destroy the planet on which we live.
Yeah.
I think it kind of has to be cyclical, and maybe that's just the course that nature has to take. Like, when a species gets so big that it nearly wipes itself out, its population diminishes loads through something that it does, and then it can sort of grow steadily again. I think maybe that's just our way of culling ourselves out, just sort of produce something. We sort of we have got now limited intelligence. We know how powerful the human brain can be. Once we can create something more powerful, once the human brain can create something more powerful than itself, maybe that's just the step that we need that's going to wipe us all out.
Yeah, well, Terence McKenna, I think it was, says that we are the sex organs of artificial intelligence.
Wow. So we're just reproducing.
Yeah, we're the butterfly of artificial... No, sorry, we're the caterpillar of the butterfly that is artificial intelligence.
Yeah, okay.
So we're just there consuming and taking, and that's... We're getting bigger and bulbous and horrible, and at some point we're going to burst.
Yeah.
And then reveal this butterfly, and then the butterfly's going to kill us all. Yeah,
that's nice. Have you seen a film? Oh, it's got Domhnall Gleeson in. Ex Machina.
Do you know what? Right, I keep saying I'm going to watch this film, but never get round to it.
You're a mug.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, frankly.
Yeah, no, I think...
If you like concepts, or even things... Oh, what was that one where it had Joaquin Phoenix in it, and it was sort of like a super advanced version of Siri?
Is that his name, Joaquin?
Joaquin Phoenix,
I thought it was Joachim.
I think it's spelt like joking.
I always look at it and go... I wonder if he made that, if he chose that name. Like, if he
yeah, for sure. I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I find it a little bit annoying about him. I've seen him in a couple of really crap movies, didn't like him, and then I saw him in this and think, oh, yes, I'll accept you calling yourself Joaquin.
Yeah. What else is he in? Oh, Signs.
Yeah.
Swing away, Jimmy.
What's that other one that by the same director that's rubbish? The Village, is it?
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out it's modern day.
Retarded.
He's the main guy in that. I didn't
why did I never see a plane in the sky?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like The Village is 20 minutes away.
You have to question that so thinly, that film, to break down the logic.
You've got to enjoy it. Like, I always have an argument because I watch shit films all the time.
Yeah.
I recently watched the new Transformers, and it's fucking brilliant.
Is it?
Yeah, it's. I'm not looking for depth or for the script's integrity or the character's development. I want to watch robots fight robots while humans try and fight the robots.
No, sometimes you just want to break down to that level.
Do you know what I mean?
That's all you need.
Yeah. Another one which I get so much shit for, Fast and Furious. Like,
that is dog shit. I mean, that's real trash.
It is. But I want to watch The Rock and Vin Diesel fight. I want to see them chuck each other through walls and then chase each other down.
And stamp on the floor to the point that the whole car park demolishes him.
Yeah. I want to see...
you want to live in that world for a minute.
Yeah, I want to see a Lamborghini being driven through a skyscraper, into another skyscraper, while Vin Diesel holds onto the back.
Is that such a crime? You just want to inhabit that world for an hour and 37 minutes.
Exactly, yeah. It's no different to watching Harry Potter, apart from... the acting's slightly better, Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and I always get shit for that all the time.
Well, come back to them. I think you should watch shit like that if you want to, but you should also balance it with things like Ex Machina and whatever this flipping film is that had Scarlett Johansson as the voice of like a Siri.
Yeah.
So anyone who's listening will be tearing their hair out. I think it's just called Her. It's called Her. And it's Scarlett Johansson is like the voice of this sort of Siri. And basically what eventually happens is all these sort of AIs, they're kind of like self-aware AIs, but they're completely subservient. and I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but they're basically the crux of it is that they sort of eventually all just get together and think that actually this isn't for us, and they can sort of move on.
Right.
And I guess that's kind of what the plot of Ex Machina is, although it's left a bit more ambiguous. But yeah, it's completely sort of trying to delve into the idea of like what does it mean to become self-aware, and what are the things that are going to be thrown up by that.
Have you seen Westworld?
Yeah, I've not seen the original film, but I've seen the series.
The series, yeah. I think my take on it was that it's almost like the journey we take. If you looked at the robot's journey of the artificially intelligent beings, robot journey of dying and dying and rebirth, dying and rebirth, dying and rebirth, dying and rebirth, it suggests like a reincarnation towards enlightenment.
Yeah.
And enlightenment was the moment where they switch on. They can now see their past lives and they understand the truth. Yeah. You know, like that's what I saw in the TV show.
I think that's very true, yeah.
Was almost, it's almost sort of as a Buddhist feel to it, you know, where these artificially intelligent beings are each time they die they get closer and get one step closer and one step closer towards this enlightenment. They talk about it like the more you die, the more your memory holds it. And that's what, it's the length of time that creates the consciousness in the AI. To the point where they then just wake up and realise that, because to begin with they're like, oh, these, I can see the gods, you know, and then you realise that gods are just simply humans, which are actually nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And
all you're there for is just for the entertainment of them.
Yes.
In fact, that is something, to go back to Rick and Morty again, that is really, really well explored. Do you know the one where he's got to go inside his car battery?
Yes.
And he's created an entire, like a microverse, just to power his battery, and the fact that it like held such, it had sort of like developed to the point that there was a scientist working on the same thing, and then they could go inside that it's a really sort of trippy thought to feel with.
But I love how it ends, where it's like, why didn't the battery turn off? And it's like, because he knows. Yeah. He knows if the battery doesn't work today when I try and turn it on, I'll replace the battery.
Yeah, and it's almost worse to actually, like, to gain that level of self-awareness.
Just to become subservient, to go, actually, I know now. Yeah. And we have to carry on playing the game.
I'm either completely subservient or I don't exist at all. Yeah. Which is worse. Oh, yeah. Well, I think I don't know when, I'm sure they're doing a new series of Westworld, right?
Yes, 2018, I think they said.
Okay, so I'm sure that one will go into that, like, what are the repercussions?
This is what annoys me, though, is that what I love about The Office, for example, the English Office, not the fucking American one, is that it was 2 series. Yeah. 2 series that you look at and go, oh, they're fantastic, you know. There are now 20 or whatever series of American Office that none of them match up, you know, they're not as good. And
they were actually okay towards the beginning, but did deteriorate.
We never make a statement anymore. We always milk the statement. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So like, I really enjoyed Walking Dead for the first few series. Yeah. Now it's just painful. Mm-hmm. And it's this thing with series that really gets them. I know there's a series of American Gods that I really enjoyed. But it took so long and gave you so much carrot and stick nonsense, and then the series ended with nothing really happening, that it's just annoyed me now. I'm probably not going to watch the second series because I don't like being mugged off like that, you know. I want to see stuff happen. Now I understand that the TV series haven't got the budget that a film has, but I think there's an argument that the format of a film should end. Like, imagine Suicide Squad. Have you seen Suicide Squad?
No.
It was a really good film, apart from the fact they tried to fit it all into 2 hours, you know? Yeah. And lots of things happened where they made the film, they made the trailer, everyone loved the trailer, but the trailer was nothing like the film, so they had to change the film to more like the trailer, and then Deadpool came out, and everyone loved Deadpool and this anti-hero idea, and so they had to change it again to make it, so it just got edited by production, basically. Yeah. But if it was a 6-part series, and so you got to explain the backstory of all the characters in more depth, 6 1-hour parts, I'd fucking watch that. Yeah. I'd even go to a cinema once a week to watch that for an hour. You know, and I think there'd be a market for that. You know, like if these films that are too big for 2 hours, if you made it into a series that was like $400 million budget on a 6-part Avengers film, that would revive the fuck it, that and put a bar and have
a start and end point.
Yeah. And so once a week you go to the cinema. There's a pub in there. There's all like-minded people for an hour a week. You go and watch a show. That would revive the cinema. Odeon, if you're listening, Mr. Odeon, like I would sell you that idea.
Basically, I don't think he needs to buy it because that sort of is what the new Odeon is in Bournemouth. I went for the first time the other day, and it's basically this sort of big bar downstairs. Well, there's loads of I think restaurant bar type things within it, but then you go into it is a normal theatre. It feels smaller, but it's got about a quarter of the amount of seats because they're all sofas. All the seats. It's like £10 a ticket, to be fair. But it was a pretty spectacular way to watch film. But I think they might even do that. I think they might put on retro nights or I don't know if they do series. That's actually a bit of a dream of an idea.
That's a good idea, isn't it? Imagine Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that much exists. I think I've seen I know certain bars or something will have it on. They'd have the football on every week. They would have everyone comes in and watch Game of Thrones, stick it on the projector.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Just do that in a pub. You don't even need to be a cinema guy.
Just live stream it illegally.
If you've got access to a bar, get a.
That I do.
So use that then. Get a projector. Get everyone around for Game of Thrones.
Black market Game of Thrones.
Yeah, you'd have to be quite particular on the people who you let in, that they didn't look too official.
First rule of Game of Thrones black market pub club.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't tell anyone about it.
Exactly. Yeah, smart.
Invite only.
Yeah, you could do that though. You could do a members club. In fact, I'm sure that is even a thing, because I live pretty near Southbourne, and there's a place called Veda Domestique. I mean, I don't want to advertise it, but it is nice. I think they do that. I think they just put on little screenings, but it's a ticketed thing. So maybe if it's a ticketed thing, it's allowed. So charge people to come into your bar, buy your booze.
Yeah.
Do that. That's genius. I don't know why more people don't think of that.
That's a great idea.
There you go. That's your business idea.
Yeah, and by the way, if anyone does want to sell adverts on here, then I'm open to the ideas. I'm not going to sell stuff I didn't like, but I'm happy to sell.
Sky. Would you advertise Sky?
I don't think they want to advertise with me.
Just hypothetically, if the 9 people that listen to this are their real demographic, they're really after them.
Yeah.
Would you advertise a bit of Murdoch?
No, not Murdoch. I had this idea that I could, at the start of the show, we could do fake adverts. We could do our own fake advert, and then at the end of that, just say, but seriously, we could sell advert space. Try and get that in there. But then I thought no, because the adverts would get really silly, and then anyone who wants to advertise wouldn't want to be a part of the silly adverts.
Something's as ridiculous.
Yeah, and not that anyone's going to want to advertise to my 9 followers.
Oh, well, not yet maybe.
Yeah.
But when they've heard how interesting I was, it might grow exponentially.
Yeah. Just before we wrap this up, you're studying 3 languages, is that right?
That is accurate, yeah.
So what languages are you studying?
French, Spanish, and German.
And so how does that work? Why doesn't it all just become one ball of unknown?
Especially French and Spanish. That becomes one ball of unknown because they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're both of Latin origin, so that is pretty tough in and of itself. Just trying to differentiate between your C's and your W's, if you know what I mean. But it can sort of become some weird gelatinous mess of information. But you gradually get better. I'm quite fortunate at the moment that none of my lectures for different languages fall on the same day. So I have pretty much exclusively French days and Spanish days and German days, things like that. So it's easy to sort of work around in that sense. It's tough just in the sense that I'm doing 3 languages. I don't know if I'll continue German next year because it is rock hard.
Right.
When you're doing it on top of 2 languages that you sort of know reasonably well. To start German from what was pretty much scratch is tough, but it's enjoyable. When I look at sort of how many languages I would like to be able to speak, and it is a few, so I sort of, I don't know, maybe I've just got to put the work in and stop whinging about it, but it's tough.
I want to learn to speak Spanish. I say that without trying it at all.
Spanish is actually quite an easy language to learn.
Yeah.
If you got the will.
I sometimes worry I'm not a sponge anymore.
Too old.
Yeah.
The information doesn't go in.
Uno cerveza, por favor.
Nice. That would get you a beer in South America, but in Spain they'd look at you like an absolute dickhead.
Why?
Because in Spain, this is such specific thing. This is why I want to choose whether to go to Spain or South America for my Spanish studies. is they lisp the Z in Spain. So like the word for head says cabeza, but in Spain they would say cabeza, or instead of saying cerveza, they would say cerveza, and put a little lisp on the Zs.
Cerveza.
Nice, cerveza. Exactly, spot on. And I think there's quite a sexiness to that, and I think I could really get down with the lisping the Zs.
Yeah.
But South America seems more sort of sexy and foreign to me, so I think I'd rather go there.
Better.
Maybe Chile.
I imagine.
But next, the entirety.
Santiago.
Well, yeah. Well, Chile's right up there for me. Chile or maybe Argentina, but I feel like if I was in like Buenos Aires, it'd be too intense.
Yeah,
I
we're
wouldn't
pretty
want to
close
go.
to having a fight with the Falklands again, aren't we?
Imagine that. Imagine that's still important.
You become a POW.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I wouldn't be the only English person living in Argentina.
No, but they'd round them up.
Oh no, into
Pretty
camps.
brutal. Yeah, the junta militia were pretty bad back in the day in Argentina, I think. I hope so, anyway.
I mean, I would probably...
No, you know what I mean.
I'd probably tell them pretty early on, say, I don't actually think we've got much of a claim to the Falklands, if that makes you want to treat me better.
What about the fact we've lived there for ages? We've got like
I don't
4 or
really
5
care.
generations of people living there.
I don't really
Now,
care
I'm
who
not going to
owns
get
it.
into the argument. I haven't got a dog in the fight. I don't really care. But they've been living there for fucking ages. And I'd ask the people. And I'm pretty sure the people are all happy to be British.
I would, put it to a vote to the people. That's what should be done.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's done and dusted.
And then whoever...
Who do you think you are? British? Sound.
Okay. Well,
Next.
50-50 split, and they have to divide the island into, and there's like a border crossing between British and Argentinian land.
Yeah.
That's just going to get like what Ireland's going to become after Brexit.
Yeah, oh well, Jesus. After the DUP use that 10 billion to reignite the IRA.
Build the wall.
Yeah.
They're going to trump it.
Strong and stable.
Well, yeah, that is a more interesting one, because I'm studying languages at university. I'll pretty much be graduating with a degree, hopefully, in European languages by the time the Article 50 is kind of worn out.
Yeah.
And we've actually got to leave then. So it's basically like going into Europe with a degree worth its weight in jelly beans after that, because there probably won't be any more free movement.
That's a very
I'll
good
have
point.
to sort of visa between the works, and that's why I think Ireland's going to become so interesting, is because you've then potentially going to have a hard border between an EU country and a non-EU country. There's going to be borders there. I'm going to have to go through loads of borders. It's like we're taking a shift back, which is a bit of an annoying time for it to happen, as I'm just about to hopefully be going around Europe to learn languages.
I think the free movement will go, but I think they'll allow people that are living in other countries at the moment to stay in those other countries without... Because they were talking about first, like, if everyone had to go back and reapply for the visa in that country, but
imagine that.
How incredibly retarded! It's just not smart, is it, for anyone?
The amount that would disrupt.
It's like a petty thing. It was like cutting over to spite your face, sort of.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people within the UK that are European nationals that are living here and working here and helping here.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Imagine all the people
British
in Marbella.
expats,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which they had an anti-immigration rally recently. Loads of expats did in Spain.
Okay.
Which I just thought was one of the funniest things.
That is quite
marched
interesting.
For anti-immigration in Britain, in Spain, as expats.
It's like, I feel really sorry for comedians and satirists now, because you can't satirise that. That is so funny just in and of itself. It's like an idea a comedian would come up with. So how do you write comedy that's meant to be like sort of taking a sideways glance at what's happening at the moment, when stuff like that is actually going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I think on that note, we should call it a day.
Let's call it a day. Thanks very much.
In a minute, we're going to be doing, in a little bit, we're going to be doing the How to Save the World podcast, part 3, morality. Join in, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. Me and Joe had a good time, I imagine.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Yeah.
No, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Take care. And arrivederci.
Nice.
Which is Italian. I don't know if you know that one.
I've not heard of that one yet, but I'm coming around to that. I'll do Italian next year.
Brilliant. Well, bye.
Ciao.
Bye.